Welcome to the Charlene Hess Show, living on your heart's edge on transformationtalkradio.com. In each episode, Charlene empowers you to shed the layers of your ego that hold you back and to connect more deeply to your true self. You will hear real, raw, and inspiring stories of people just like you who are letting go of fear to follow their heart's calling. Finally, the inspiration you've been waiting for to step out of fear and into your knowing. Get ready to feel empowered to live from your heart and follow that dream inside of you. Discover how to live on your heart's edge. The world is waiting for you to shine your light and share your gift. Now here's your host.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Charlene Hess Show, Living on Your Heart's Edge. Today is an interesting show because I have chosen to go ahead and talk a little bit more about fear specifically. As I was just listening to the intro with you as we're getting ready to start the show, I just have to smile because when I wrote that recording and talking about stepping out of your fear and into your knowing, the type of fear that I was talking about there is the kind of fear that we have that holds us back. Sort of a lot of that little inner voice that we have of saying we're not good enough, we're not ready. That question of, well, what if this would happen and what if that would happen? And so I think that a lot of times we have these fears that we take on that prevent us from stepping forward in shining our light. And today's show, I'm going to be talking a little bit more specifically about breaking through big physical fears. Specifically, the fear of heights, for me, is one of the fears that I had. And so how can breaking through a fear of heights be related to breaking through the fears that you have of the I'm not good enough, I'm not ready, I don't think that I can move forward in this next step? And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. And today is going to be an interactive show where I want to hear from you. I would love to have you call in and share any stories that you have about how you have broken through your fears, or if you have a question about how do you break through this fear, or what about this kind of fear, Charlene, what would you do in this scenario? I'm really hoping that I'll get a lot of people calling in and this can be a really interactive show. But I want to start with giving you my free giveaway because every show I love to do a free giveaway as an opportunity for the listeners to take advantage of listening to the show live. That means you're going to get a little extra gift of a free giveaway. And so today's free giveaway is a free 30-minute session with me. So this is more than just a consultation. I'm going to do a full 30-minute session of helping you to break through a fear that you have. Something that maybe you've been sitting on or thinking about that's holding you back from doing something that you want to do, from doing something that you love, whether it be an actual fear that's tangible, like fear of heights or fear of water or fear of losing someone, or if it's a fear of I'm not good enough, I'm not ready, I can't leave my job, I can't leave my relationship, I can't start my relationship. It doesn't matter what the fear is. It all is based around the same thing. And that is not knowing or having that connection to your heart, which is what we're going to talk a little bit about today. So the free 30-minute consultation, the free 30-minute session, all you have to do is email me at heartsedge@charlenehess.com. That is CharlenHess.com. And you can email me there and just say, hey, Charlene, I want my free session. And then I will go ahead and email you back and we'll schedule a time and we can go through that. So let's get started. I am going to start with telling you the story of me and my fear of heights. So I have been afraid of heights for as long as I can remember. And it is really interesting that I have this fear because this fear of heights does not seem consistent with my adventurous spirit and my adventurous nature. And so it has been a really interesting experience for me as I've been going through my life and realizing that, wait a minute, I'm actually afraid of heights. To have that feeling because I want to reject it. I want to deny it because I'm also so adventurous and I want to do adventurous things. So I have this conflict of well, I want to do that adventurous thing, but I don't know that I can because I'm really feeling afraid. And so when I first learned that I was afraid of heights, I think I was probably 7 or 8 years old. And I was driving in the car with my family. And as my parents would drive over a bridge, I would look out the window and instantly feel terrified. I would literally get out of my seat, get down on the floor, and hide underneath my siblings' feet because I was so afraid. And as I started to realize that I had the fear, it began to grow. And so I became really afraid of bridges. I became afraid of overpasses. And I lived in Ohio, so everything is flat. There weren't a lot of opportunities for me to go up high. Occasionally, we would climb up on the roof when we were kids. But I was always really, really afraid. But I was also never willing to admit that I was afraid because I didn't want to show that I had a weakness, right? Because if you have a fear and you're controlled by that fear, then that means you're weak. So that's an important piece as I continue on in my story. And so as I'm going through this experience, going through life, I'm getting older, I notice that there's different times where I am forced to drive myself over a bridge. And I would just go, okay, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. I would hold onto the steering wheel and I would just try and tell myself I'm not afraid. So that is one technique or tool or coping mechanism that we have when we're faced with a fear that it's something that seems irrational and we just need to keep doing it, is we can just tell ourselves, I'm not afraid. I have to do this. I have to drive over this bridge in order to get to my destination. Hold onto the steering wheel. I'm not afraid. I would breathe through it. This is a very effective way to help you get through doing something. As I continue to get older and I begin hiking and backpacking, I am finding that as I hike up these mountains, I get close to these ledges and I would instantly start to sweat. Have you guys ever had that experience where you're standing on a ledge or you're standing close to a ledge or you're watching somebody else stand close to a ledge and your hands start to sweat and my feet would start to sweat? I could feel my heart rate elevating and I would just breathe through it. Just breathe through and go, it's okay. It's okay. You're safe. You're safe. You're not going to fall. As my mind is going through all of the possible scenarios of my impending death as I'm going to fall off the ledge of this cliff that even though it's that far away, irrational, but real. And so I went through life having this fear and I found myself avoiding situations that would put me in that place. And I found that it started to hold me back from doing some of the things that I wanted to do. My friends would be adventurous and want to go and do things and go like do high roller coasters or, let's go up in this Space Needle and look over the edge. And I found myself becoming more and more resistant because I realized that every time I had faced a fear, meaning that the fear came and I muscled my way through it, it didn't actually get better. It suppressed and it made me become more resistant. Now, I didn't know this at the time. I thought that I was coming up with a really effective coping mechanism of pretending I'm not afraid, breathe, and walk through it. And so I learned that as I began to do a lot of the work that I did with Cornelia Stephanie. A lot of you know her and listen to her show here on Transformation Talk Radio. She has been my mentor and my life coach for many years. And as we began to talk about emotional processing, so processing your emotions that are coming up. And so fear is an emotion just like any other emotion. It's a feeling that we have. We have a thought that is attached to a outcome. So we have this idea there's going to be this outcome and we think about this outcome and then we start to feel this fear feeling coming up. But I have observed and I have noticed that fear is one of those emotions that a lot of people don't acknowledge or process. And so it was something that I personally didn't think of that I needed to process the same way that I was processing all of the other emotions that I had suppressed. I felt like I had a really good handle on it. In fact, if you had talked to me, you would never know I was afraid of heights. I never told anybody. I never talked about it. because I would go with my adventure buddies and my friends, and we would do these hikes and we would do these trips, and I would just muscle my way through it and pretend like I wasn't afraid, nobody knew because I was able to really cover this up. But what was the truth about it is that even though I was trying to cover it up, I was still having a physiological effect in my body that I was afraid. And so I, again, did not know this at the time. I just decided I'm just going to keep facing my fears, feel the fear and do it anyway, is commonly what I would say. And again, I do believe that that is effective in some ways, but I want to talk about how to break through a fear, not face a fear, but really bust through a fear to where you no longer feel that physiological feeling in your body when you are faced with that fear, when you are faced with that experience that creates the fear in your body. And so I had an experience where I was able to continue on this journey of facing my fears, that everything completely changed. I had come to that point where I could no longer face my fear and pretend like I wasn't afraid, because I had reached my threshold of suppression. And so that is what I'm going to talk to you about. I'm going to share with you the story of what exactly happened where I got to that point of I can't hide it anymore. I can't pretend like I'm not afraid anymore. I can't face my fear and do it anyway anymore. Something has to give. So we're going to take a quick break. And when I come back, I'm going to share with you the story of what happened, of how I was able to come to that turning point where I couldn't just face my fear anymore. And I knew I had to bust through it. So we're going to take a quick break. Remember, I would love to have you call in. The phone number is 1-800-930-2819. And we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, the story will continue. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Charlene Hess Show, Living on Your Heart's Edge. And today we are talking about busting through your fears. And specifically, before we went on break, I was talking about busting through my fear of heights. And I was about to tell the story of when I came to that point where I could no longer face my fears and I had to break through. So 1 year ago this month, I decided for my birthday, because this is my birthday month, I got all of my friends, my adventure friends, to get together, and we decided we were going to go to Zion National Park to do some hiking, because it's so different than the hiking that we do here in the Pacific Northwest. So we decided, great, we're going to go to Zion. We're going to do some hiking. It's super exciting. I looked up a lot of the hikes, and everyone decided, let's do this hike called Angel's Landing. And I thought, sure, that looks great. I looked it up on my little All Trails app and saw, yeah, it's a pretty easy, doable hike, some elevation gain, but not a big deal. So we get there and it's pretty early in the morning. We wanted to catch an early morning sunrise. So we get there and we all start hiking. And I have a wonderful group of adventurous friends who are way more daring and adventurous than I am. And I'm sort of like on this edge. They do mountain biking and ski touring and all of this, in my opinion, crazy stuff when you're afraid of heights. And so for them, this is like super easy, no problem. So we began to do this hike. It's early morning. I hadn't eaten breakfast yet, but I think it was only a 6-mile hike. So it wasn't anything super big deal. And we start and we go. And as we start hiking, I'm hiking along and we're with the group, and I start to realize that this is a very different type of hike, because in the Pacific Northwest, I am surrounded by trees. I have so many trees and greenery around me that you don't realize how high you are. So as we begin to start hiking, I am on what I call a bald mountain, right? Because these mountains are bald. There's no trees, there's nothing, no shrubs. It's open and you can literally see over the edge of the cliff the entire time you're hiking up. And I don't know if any of you have ever hiked Angel's Landing or if you're familiar with Angel's Landing, but you can go and look at a YouTube video and it's literally listed as one of the world's scariest hikes. I missed that point. But we got up to a sign and there's a sign that says, warning, 6 people have died doing this hike. And all of a sudden I felt this like huge gulp, like, wait a minute, people have like really died. It's not just like my imagination that you could die when you're hiking, but like people have actually died doing this. And my group's like, yeah, right on. Let's keep going. This is going to be great. And I'm just hiking along and I'm just like keep swallowing because this lump is in my throat as I'm realizing, oh my goodness, I can do this. And so as we're walking up and hiking and the higher we get, I look up and I see this platform and I think it's going to be okay. It's safe. We're at the top. And I get there and realize, oh, this isn't the top. And I look up and see these people that look like the size of an ant way up on what looked to me an impossible area to hike. And there's people up there. So I just keep going. And I'm pushing through my fear. I'm facing my fear. I'm doing it anyway. I'm gulping. I'm breathing. I'm doing my breathing techniques. I'm telling myself in my brain, logically, realistically, nothing's going to happen, Charlene. You're not going to fall off the edge. It's going to be okay. They have a chain, right? There's this chain you can hang on to. Okay, the chain did not feel very safe. Sure, it was a thick chain, but I'm on the ledge of a cliff. So anyway, I keep hiking and I came to a point to where everyone just kept going. And I got to this point where I stopped and I turned around and I looked down and saw that we were about 5,000 foot drop off. And I froze. I literally could not move my body. Not only were my hands and my feet sweating, my entire body was sweating. I was cold. I'd never had this experience before. I had never had an experience where I was literally paralyzed with fear. I turned around, I put my back against the rock, and I kind of slid down to where I could sit. And I was next to this little tiny tree that made me feel a little bit safe because I felt like there could be something I could grab onto if I fell over the ledge. And I sat there and my friends were like, do you want us to wait? What's going on? I'm like, oh no, keep going. I'm fine. And my one friend was like, do you want me to stay here with you? How are you doing? They could see that my face had gone completely white. And I said, nope, this might be my top. Please go ahead without me. I knew that there wasn't any help that I could take. There was nothing anybody could do for me. This was about me and my fear. So I sat there with my back pressed up against the rock and I began to cry. And I just sat there and cried. And I felt so silly because I'm like, here I am. Like, what? You're going to sit here and cry, Charlene? Right? So I have that voice in my head that's going, come on, get up, do it. You got this. But what really needed to happen was I needed to actually experience, embrace, bring on, accept my terror and my fear. And so that is exactly what I did, is I sat there on that rock. People came up and they passed me and I was like, they were like, oh, are you enjoying the view? I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm enjoying the view. I'm terrified that I'm going to die right now. And as irrational as it may have seemed for me to have that, or as much as I wanted to judge myself for feeling that way, it had to happen. I had to have the emotional processing experience of allowing the fear to take over me. I let my brain go through all of the worst case scenarios. I let my brain think about people that actually died, what their families must have gone through, knowing that they died falling off a cliff, thinking about what their experience was like, that they were hiking and having a good time and then boom, their life was over and that could happen to me or that could happen to any of my friends. And I let it take over me and I cried and I sat there and I cried and I shook and I was cold. And then eventually as the tears passed, I ate my Lara bar and I regained, like my blood sugar kind of came back a little bit and I had a decision to make. What am I going to do? Am I going to just go back down and say, okay, this is it? And for me, that felt like failure. I felt like I can't do it. I can't let this fear control me. I do have a fear of heights. I am terrified, but I'm going to go ahead and walk through it. Not pretending like I'm not afraid, but embracing that I am terrified and I'm going to keep moving forward. I am afraid and I'm going to keep moving forward. And so I stood up, clamped my backpack, and I started walking up to the top. And step by step by step, I felt myself releasing the fear. I felt myself letting go a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more until finally I made it to the top. And there's all these people standing up there and my friends are, crack open a beer. Woohoo, we made it. And I'm like, okay, everybody get away from the ledge. We made it. Can we go down now? And I actually did a video from there. If you go on my YouTube channel, on my playlist, I think it is on my video blog playlist, and you can see I actually did a video from the top of Angel's Landing talking about how I just faced my fear and I did it. I also talked about this on my radio show right after I got back from the trip when I was a guest or a co-host on the Cornelia Stephanie show, which you can go on to charlenehess.com, and I have it on my media channel, on my video blog. It's on there, or you can go to my YouTube channel and find it there, just if you're curious to see me in that moment of breaking through my fear. And then we came back down, and I felt very worn out and exhausted, but I also felt elated that I actually did it. Now, I thought that I had just faced a fear and did it anyway. I didn't realize that actually I had busted through my fear. And so the way that I had learned that I actually busted through my fear was I discovered, so I just went about my life. I did my hikes, I did my adventures, I did my things, and I didn't really pay attention to it. And I didn't really think about that experience. And I just went on a 3-week road trip. And in that 3-week road trip included going to the Grand Canyon. And I was at the Grand Canyon and I stood on the ledge, and the ledge was like back behind me. And I looked up and I kind of took a little selfie because I wanted to take a picture of myself. Like, look, I'm standing close to the ledge. And I took a picture of myself and it was great. And I didn't actually notice that I wasn't actually terrified or fearful. I did notice like, wow, I got a lot closer to the ledge than I used to in the past and didn't think about it. And then I went to Sedona, and I was in Sedona and I was climbing this really beautiful climb on Bell Rock. And a bunch of people were there and we were offering to take pictures of each other. And so I climbed up and I sat on this rock. My feet were hanging over the ledge and it was a big drop off. And I stood there and took a picture. And I sat there, had my picture taken, and then I came back. And later I was scrolling through my pictures and I looked and I was like, wait a minute, that's me sitting on a ledge with my feet hanging over. I never would have done that before. Isn't that interesting? And the moment that I actually knew that I broke through the fear, that I'm actually not afraid of heights, came 3 weeks ago. We decided to take a hike or a walk through over to Deception Pass. And here in the Pacific Northwest, as you're going over to Whidbey Island, there's this beautiful bridge called Deception Pass as you go to Deception Pass that goes over the water. And when I first moved here, couldn't walk over that bridge. I was so terrified. And then as I continued to face my fears, I walked across the bridge terrified. So I would walk across the bridge, pretending like everything was fine. I would walk very quickly and I would never stand and look over the ledge. But my feet and hands would sweat and my heart rate would elevate and my heart would be pounding. And I would just be like, we're just walking across the bridge. I'm just not afraid yet. Glance over, beautiful, lovely, let's go. Well, and every time I have gone, I've had that same experience where I could have a calmer face, but I was still terrified. Well, a couple weeks ago, I walked across the bridge and I was standing there on the bridge, looking over the ledge, looking straight down at the water. And my girlfriend took a picture of me. And all of a sudden I had this realization of, wait a minute, my heart rate is not elevated. My feet and my hands are not sweating. I don't have that feeling of fear. Like the anxiety, the feeling of fear, the physiological experience of the fear was gone. Absolutely amazing. And it was that moment that I realized, aha, it was when I emotionally processed, allowed the fear to paralyze me a year ago at Angel's Landing in Zion. that was the way that I actually broke through my fear. And that was such a great aha experience for me, because as a coach, I help people to emotionally process. And I know that the way to freedom, the way to the other side of whatever experience that you're having, is through feeling the emotions, to fully bring them on and process them. And for some reason, I missed that piece of applying it to myself with a tangible fear, like fear of heights. So it was an absolutely amazing experience. And it felt so good to break through that. So I am really excited to hear from you. I would love to have you call in 1-800-930-2819. And if you have any questions for me, or if you want to share a story, tell me something about how do you face your fears? What do you do? I would love to hear from you. So we're going to take a quick break, and we come back from break. I would love to talk to someone that calls in. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're listening to the Charlene Hess Show, Living on Your Heart's Edge. And today we are talking about busting through your fears. So if you're just now tuning in, I was able to just share a wonderful story of how I broke through my fear of heights. And I am asking you to call in and share with me any stories that you have about how you broke through a fear, or how you face your fears. Or if you have a question for me and you want to know something about, if you want some information or insight or help working through a fear that maybe you're kind of holding on to. So the call-in number is 1-800-930-2819. And today's free giveaway is, if you email me at heartsedge@charlenehess.com, I'm going to give you a free 30-minute session on how to break through your fears, of how to use the process that I used, as well as some other processes to break through any fear that you have that's holding you back in your life. And we have a caller. We have Henrietta from Chicago, Illinois. Hello, Henrietta. Welcome to the Charlene Hess Show.
Oh, hi. I'm delighted to be on your show.
Thanks so much for calling in. So what would you like to share with us today? Do you have a question or a story? Tell us.
Well, I really enjoyed your stories about breaking through your fears. I'm a performing artist. I work as an organist, a church organist. And for a while, I had quite a few intense fears about performing, especially around big holidays, and especially when I had a boss who was very much concerned with my performance. That just made it sort of even more pressure for me.
Right.
And so what I did was basically pretty much what you did, which was that I faced my fear. I just experienced myself feeling the fear as much as I could, because I was still playing, obviously.
Right,
we're
right.
multidimensional beings, so we can have a lot of channels of information going on at the same time. So,
right.
I would be feeling my fear physiologically. I'd be sweating. Sometimes would be worse than others. But I also sometimes would not sleep well at night, because I had a little bit of an anxiety disorder. So I would be sort of dealing with my fear of not having slept enough. My ego would be telling me, well, you didn't sleep enough, you won't play well, because, of course, you're a bit more uncoordinated when you don't play well.
Right.
So, what would happen is that, I'd sort of play the first verse of my hymn, feeling like, this is terrible, I'm doing awfully, and I'd be really feeling this intense fear. But after, I'd say about the second verse, my spirit totally kicked in, and then all of a sudden, I'm just sharing my gift that God gave me to share, and I'm sharing myself, and I'm sharing my music, and then that would be fine. So there would be this very intense time of, facing the fear, feeling it, my whole body shaking. And then probably from the outside, what was really happening is maybe my playing sounded a little bit more I don't even know if anyone could tell, because I used to ask people, I'm like, how did the first couple of verses go? That they were like, it was great,
Right.
So so that's my story, basically, is that I just basically had to look at my fear, and then it has since gone away. And the reason being is that I actually left that job where I had the boss who was so very much concerned about his image and the way he looked. And I now have jobs where I'm in charge, I'm in control. And I think that's important, certainly for me as an artist, to realize, no, I've got something really special that I'm sharing here, and my artistry doesn't have to live up to anybody's notion of what that should be. And I think, after facing down that fear, I think that that's why I attracted all these new jobs, where I was just like, okay, I'm just here to share my gift.
Right. You brought up an interesting point, Henrietta, that I'd like to touch on. So that's a really good point. As a musician, my guess is you're a little bit empathic, because I find that a lot of artists, musicians are. And that is a really good point, because I think that sometimes when we are experiencing strong feelings, they're not necessarily just our own. And so when you touched on that topic, when you touched on the point about how your boss was really concerned about his image, and he felt like your playing was going to affect what people thought about him, which was his fear. It was his fear of not feeling like he was good enough, that he's projecting onto you. And for you as a musical person, as an empath, somebody who's really in touch with that, are picking that up and carrying that. And so you're not only processing your own fear of, I really just want to do a good job, and I have this gift that I'm feeling called to share. You're not processing his fear of, it's not going to be good enough.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's very true. And I'm glad you brought that up.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And so now that you are not working under that environment, under that type of additional stress of somebody else's fear being put on you, and you said that you had a little bit of an anxiety disorder. Tell me about that, and what do you do for that? Or did that
go? That I think was, I've always tried to face my fears. I've always known that they've held me back. And after my divorce, which was a long time ago now, about 17 years ago, I got divorced because my ex-husband did not want to have children. So I decided to adopt as a single parent. And not only that, I adopted overseas by myself. And my own mother died when I was quite young. So it was, I wasn't really like having that kind of support. So it was a huge thing for me. And I did adopt, and that was a big fear I overcame as well. And then I adopted again. So I think my anxiety came about simply because of, naturally, just the weight of being a single parent and being solely responsible. So yeah, occasionally I would get the sleep. I mean, it's actually lessened now that my kids are pretty much grown up, as teenagers now. But I think that coupled on with the performing artist career, that's quite a bit of exposure to manage,
Yes.
So there you go.
That's a whole nother topic of the fears that we could do a whole show on the fears we experience as parents.
Yes, absolutely.
Huge.
You could.
It's like you now, like kind of like how your old boss had projected his fears on you about, the way that he felt like your performance was going to be reflected in what people thought about him. Well, we do that with our children.
Sure.
Whatever our kids do,
absolutely,
is a reflection of us.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that some of that is reasonable because, I mean, let's face it, as a parent, you've got like a karmic obligation to your children. You are, responsible. You're the person who's here to guide them on earth. There's a natural sense of feeling like, okay, well, they're not helpless, but they're inexperienced here on earth. So I think when they were little,
yes.
but not so much now. They're finding their way. But
right.
I think certainly as a single parent, I was feeling like, oh, it's just all on me.
Yes.
So, but yeah, you could do a whole show with that for sure.
Right. Yeah, I have definitely had that experience. I, as a single parent as well. And, I'm actually in the process of that right now, where my son is going through something pretty big. And he's grown. He's a 25-year-old man, and he's going through a process right now where I am definitely having to process some fear for him and some fear for me as he's going through a pretty big deal in a custody battle. And that is, it's an ongoing process. When you break through, like I broke through the fear of heights, and it's absolutely wonderful. And I feel like I can walk on ledges. I can watch, TV of people walking on ledges, and my hands aren't going to sweat, and I'm not going to freak out. But it is a continual, we have things that show up all the time that we're going to have to continually break through. And that is where the process of not just feeling the fear and doing it anyway works, because that's going to help you get through it in the moment. But to actually break through the fear, you have to take on and really feel and experience and emotionally process the absolute worst outcome. And I have done that with my son with a lot of different things. Because he was definitely a very challenging young man. He definitely loves to push boundaries and walk on edges that I don't walk on. And that is definitely something to keep working through and breaking through. Thank you so much for calling in, Henrietta. We're going to take a quick break, and I'd love to hear back if anyone else wants to call in, 1-800-930-2819. I'd love to hear more callers call in, and thanks again, Henrietta, for calling in. I look forward to maybe talking to you again more in the future.
Yes, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Charlene Hess Show, Living on Your Heart's Edge. And today we're talking about facing your fears or busting through your fears. And that is what I am talking about. There is a difference between just facing a fear and breaking through a fear. And so we just had a great caller, Henrietta, called in from Illinois and was sharing with us her experience that brought up a really good point. And that was really talking about how sometimes we are processing and feeling the feelings of somebody else. And it's important to know when you are processing your feelings or processing someone else's feelings. And there is a little technique that you can do when you're doing that. So maybe you have an experience where you maybe have a fear and it's like this kind of low level fear, or maybe it's just kind of like a healthy fear, like speaking on stage, but you are a motivational speaker. I know so many motivational speakers or transformational speakers who still, every time they get on stage, they have a little bit of fear. But that's not the kind of fear that holds them back from doing what it is that they're called to do. So there's a different type of fear where we just have a little bit of nerves or a little bit of nervousness, wanting to make sure we do a good job, or just sort of that butterfly feeling like you're about to do something big, so long as it's not preventing you from doing what you're doing or what you're called to do or what you are, what you're being asked to do. But it's different when it's something that you truly are afraid of, and then you keep suppressing it and suppressing it and suppressing it so that you're not able to actually process it in the moment. So feeling the fear and doing it anyway. How can we change that so that it's not about, I'm feeling the fear, I'm pretending like I'm not afraid, and I'm going to keep going? Okay, so that's one way that's going to suppress the fear and press it down. So to feel the fear and do it anyway is to feel the fear. And so how do you do that? One is you acknowledge, I am afraid. And you can even use the words, I am afraid of, and then you say the thing that you're afraid of. Say the thing, I'm afraid of heights. I'm afraid of losing my job. I'm afraid of speaking out loud, speaking up in this scenario, right? So whatever it is that you're afraid of, it can be any topic, verbalize it, acknowledge it, admit it, rather than trying to pretend it's not there. Second is let your mind go there. Timing is important, of course, because you're not going to do this, when you've got, you're being pushed into a situation where it's timely. But beforehand, let your mind go there. Let your mind go to the worst case scenario. Let your mind think about what is the worst thing that could happen and feel what it would feel like if that worst thing happened. Because that's really what it is when we have that fear that's holding us back, it's because we don't want that thing to happen that we're afraid is going to happen, right? Because that's why we're feeling afraid, is because we're afraid that something else is going to happen. Maybe ultimately it's the fear of death, or maybe ultimately it's the fear of loss. Maybe it's the fear of failure. So you can kind of break it down to, what is this fear that I have? What's it actually attached to? And the way that you do that is you let your mind go there. You let your mind go to, okay, what's the worst that could happen? I'm going to feel that. I'm going to feel the worst thing that could happen. And I've done this with so many different scenarios, especially as a mother. We kind of touched on that when Henrietta called in. As a mother and with your children, I'm afraid that my children that I'm going to lose my child. I'm afraid that they're going to grow up and be, a delinquent or, they're going to hurt somebody else, or they're going to get hurt, or they're going to die, and literally feel, what would it feel like if that actually happened, and feel those feelings. And I am telling you, in the end, on the other side of that, there is so much space and freedom when you go to the other side of that, because you already felt it. You felt the worst case scenario rather than avoided it. And then you can now logically enter the situation, because you no longer are being controlled by this physiological thing that's happening because you're in denial and suppression. So that's the first step. Then to go ahead and do whatever the thing is that you're afraid of doing, right? So after you've felt that, you've acknowledged it, you verbalized it, you've felt the feelings of it, you made it big, you let your mind go to the worst case scenario. Now go ahead and do it. So do that thing that you thought that you couldn't do or you were afraid of doing, and notice the different sensation in your body. Pay attention to that. And then celebrate the breakthrough. Celebrate the breakthrough. Acknowledge it. Talk about it. Be aware, wow, I felt this fear and did it anyway. So feel the fear and do it anyway looks different than pretend I'm not afraid and keep going. That's suppression. So that is one technique. Another technique, which I would love to talk to you about, maybe next show, I might be bringing on a wonderful woman, Gwen Orweller, who does EFT, emotional freedom tapping, which is another amazing technique that you can use to break through fear, to attack it from a physiological standpoint. And so EFT is another amazing way to do that. And so as we're wrapping up today, I just want to, again, invite you to email me, heartsedge@charlenehess.com. That's Heart's Edge, like the show, Living on Your Heart's Edge, CharlenHess.com. And just in the subject title, put my free session, because I'm going to give you a free 30-minute session where you can tell me any fear that you have that you would like to help me, you would like to have me help you break through, because I would love to do that for you. And you can listen to any of my past shows on my YouTube channel, Charlene Hess, and just go to the link. There's several different playlists there, and there's the playlist that says Transformation Talk Radio. All of my past shows are there. I also have my video blog on there where you're able to kind of go through and see how I have openly processed a lot of the things that I've been going through using the emotional processing experience and technique. And you can also go to my website, charlenehess.com, and learn a little bit more about that. So I would love to help you with that emotional process experience of breaking through a fear, of helping you to face whatever fear it is that you have, no matter how big or small, so that you can live a life of freedom and joy, of purpose and of play, where you don't have to feel like you are being held back because of that nagging little voice, whether it be realistic or unrealistic, that says you can't do this, be afraid, where you can be victorious and step through and break through and literally have the freedom and release of it not controlling your life anymore, or even being a nagging little voice. Even if you don't feel like it's controlling your life, but it's that nagging voice you want to let go of, please give me an email and I would love to help you. So thank you so much for tuning in today. You have been listening to Living on Your Heart's Edge, Charlene Hess Show. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll be talking to you again in 2 weeks. Ciao.
Thank you for listening to the Charlene Hess Show, Living on Your Heart's Edge, with your host, Charlene Hess. Tune in every first and third Friday at noon Pacific on transformationtalkradio.com as Charlene empowers you to shed the layers of your ego and to connect to your heart so that you can live your calling and shine your unique divine light. For more information or to listen to past shows, visit charlenehess.com. That's CharlenHess.com. See you next time.